Alright, I am back with another Destiny 2 video. I've been slacking a bit on videos because I've been putting dozens of hours into unnamed mystery game that is taking a very long time, so less time for everything else. I did get to run the dungeon last night, which was very fun. I liked it. But that leads into the topic of the day, which, no exaggeration, I think may genuinely be one of the wildest Destiny stories I've ever seen. Um, Again, I do this for a living. I have written thousands of Destiny articles over the years, I think, and it is hard to remember something that, if this pans out, if this is true, and I am pretty much all aboard the theory at this point, this would be kind of the biggest scandal I've seen from the game. Okay, so to lay this all out, over the years, there's always these, complaints that certain roles of certain guns seem exceedingly rare, and the idea is that Bungie specifically weights perks differently. I remember this all the way back where, like, oh, Rampage isn't dropping, enough for the combo I want, and so that must be weighted. Every time this comes up, Bungie checks behind the scenes and they're like, no, it's not happening. It's RNG. Sorry. This is just the way things go. This came up again with the VS Chill inhibitor, which is the new heavy grenade launcher, which has the very good combo of Envious Assassin and Bait and Switch. Very synergistic. GLs are meta right now, especially this season with the artifact, blah, blah, blah. People were saying that trying to find that role felt borderline impossible, with people doing hundreds of runs to try and get that role, and like no one in their fire team getting it, or maybe one person got it, which, again, oh, it's RNG, things happen, but this one was weird, especially because of like the volume of this. And then also, at least one person ran some sort of like data analysis to show that this felt out of the ordinary. And so this got enough attention for Bungie to look into it. DMG is like, we looked into it. There's no perk weighting. Sorry. So same old song and dance. Now, things have gotten crazy because there is this new theory. This was put forward by T1 Vendetta, which he was painting as like, this is some crazy copium theory, but I think there's something here where this is called a proximity perk theory, where the overall idea is not that individual perks are weighted, but perk combos are being weighted. So the pairing of the two perks, which makes certain roles more rare than others, and some roles insanely rare. So the idea is that when you go on light.gg, which is like the big database using Destiny's API of like all the weapons in the game, and there you see a list of 2 columns of perks that are like the possible roles. The columns and the order of these perks are in the API, so it's not like they're just thrown together randomly by, light.gg site runners or something. So it's pulled from the API. What appears to be happening is that in this list, and I'm going to have this on screen, if you have a perk on the left side and it is anywhere from, exactly across from another perk or one space away diagonally from another perk, that is the most common perk combination, or in the tier of the most common perk combinations, where it's a 1 in 24 chance of getting that combo. So, you get a bunch of drops. 21 in 24 is like not amazing. It's not terrible. You get enough drops, you'll probably get that combo. But if you start going out from that, and if you go down to a space of 2, so 2 diagonally down, that increases it. That increases it to a 1 in 49 chance. So you have essentially half the chance of getting that roll as the first one. The problem is this increases exponentially. So by the time you get down to the 3 spaces away going diagonally, and like the bottom of the list wraps around back to the top of the list, it's like a loop. So if you're, down at the bottom and you go 3 spaces down, it's going to come back at the top. Your probability then becomes 1 in 454, according to this data analysis. So in this case, with VS Chill Inhibitor, the 2 perks people are looking for, Envious and Bait and Switch, are in fact 3 spaces away. So that would be an explanation as to why that perk combo is so rare. Okay, copium weird, but like, expanding this out to other weapons, you can essentially do this with any weapon you have enough data for. And I think the one example people did was a ton of drops of Truth Teller, which is like the world drop. No one really cares about this. It's not a particularly good weapon with really any good combos, but they did the data on Truth Teller drops based on available data, and it's the same distribution. So 0 to 1 spaces away, most common, then next most common, 2 spaces, and then almost impossible to get for most runs is 3 spaces away. It doesn't matter what the perk combo is. In the VS Chill Inhibitor's case, it's the best combo, and this is coming up, A, because it's a super meta weapon. It is the best perk combo on that weapon, and it is in a dungeon where farming dungeons is awful because you have to do a whole encounter, and then you have 3 pieces of armor and 3 weapons that can drop. So you have a 1 in 6 chance to begin with. So like getting this is like a 1 in a couple thousand chance, I think, if you factor in how bad it is to farm dungeons. And this may not come up all that often. We have seen this with certain rolls of certain weapons in the past where peers have complained like, oh, I can't get this roll. Like, what the hell? Like, I farmed 300 copies of this and I can't get it. Like, it's not always the one meta thing everyone's going for, which has happened, but this has always been some level of complaint. And the explanation is always just, oh, it's RNG. RNG sucks. And these are, it's hard to quantify this as a group because it's just most of the time individual people complaining about rolls, or a couple dozen people, a couple hundred people. This is happening and coming to a head because of the VS Chill Inhibitor is such a sought after thing, and it's so hard to farm to begin with that it's really in the prominent slot here. The idea that this can happen with any pair of perks if they're spaced out enough would explain why, if Bungie keeps looking into individual perk weighting, like if Envious Arsenal is not dropping nearly as much as all the other perks, they'd be like, no, it is. Like, this isn't wrong. But if they're not looking into the combo weighting or this proximity idea, they wouldn't find that. And again, I know everyone's going to say, like, Bungie lied, like, Bungie's secretly hiding from this and using this to artificially increase playtime. I really doubt it, because again, this is not like they're targeting specific god rolls to be like, aha, we're going to make them farm, extra for these god rolls. It's just based on proximity with, I don't know, every weapon, it seems. And we're trying to track how long this has been happening. Some people say it's from Forsaken, when we had like the first major perk changes. Some people say it's happening as early as Beyond Light, because you can still get a lot of those weapons. I do not believe this is something that started with the final shape. So it's can happen with any perk. Sometimes it'll be like some terrible combo that you never care about getting, so no one notices. Like, who cares if you get, Elemental Capacitor and, Harmony or something. Nobody really cares about a lot of these perk combos. And in other instances, it doesn't come up as much because there are, depending on the activity, there are different ways to get lots and lots of drops and mitigate this. So like Onslaught, you're getting, at least original Onslaught, you're getting tons of drops per run. You can focus those drops for more chances at a specific gun in a short amount of time, and you can also get double perks. And it's so like it may have still been hard to get the roll you want, but like this 1 in whatever chance, it's not going to feel nearly as terrible as it is for the individual dungeon farming instance. So like you understand, what this means here and why that would be different, and why this doesn't come up like literally all of the time, because you need like the most meta weapon, a terrible way to farm it, in one specific 3 distance roll that you're trying to get. So like all of these 3 things have come together to be sort of a perfect storm with Chill Inhibitor, which is the reason this got like hardcore investigated by all these like Destiny statisticians. I was skeptical of this when the first bit of data came out. It was like one guy running some things. Like, I'm not the biggest data understander. Bungie came out with their no perks aren't weighted thing, and it felt like this, like, okay, this is always kind of what happens. I am on board with this now. I am, my opinion, throwing my weight of opinion here, I am, often wrong, but I believe that this is true. I have seen too much data, too many of these charts to think that this is not happening. I saw someone say that like this was some sort of issue that happened in Warframe at one point, where like something that was supposed to be random, was not actually random because something was happening behind the scenes no one really understood for a long time. Uh, this isn't like I have defended Bungie from this and that, and I will say that no, I don't think they are specifically lying about this happening, and they knew this was happening, and they're doing this to, increase playtime. I don't believe that. It is still completely inexcusable. Like, I am actively upset about this in that, and I believe the player base should be upset about this, even if it's, a bug and error. This should not have been missed for, years? And if players have kept complaining about this, they should have done a deeper investigation into just, oh, well, one perk's waiting. Like, it should have occurred to someone making the actual game and designing these systems to check combo weighting or check how combos are distributed. Years this has been going on. And you could say, oh, it's not a big deal, and like it's just this weapon now that's coming up. No, that's not true. People have been trying to farm for individual rolls of weapons, all of the time. Sometimes it's like the most meta thing that everyone's going after, and everyone's like, I can't get this roll. What's the deal? But sometimes it's just like what you personally want on a weapon. So like that's not going to get reported with each individual player, and they'll just get frustrated and drop it. This is, for an individual player, this is dozens or potentially hundreds of hours of farming that was pointless because there was such a poor chance of getting the one roll you wanted, depending on what weapon you were trying to get. Collectively, across the community, hundreds of thousands of hours, millions of hours, maybe, like in terms of trying to farm for something that was just 10 times less likely, if not more so, than a normal drop. Just anecdotally, also, besides all this data, it just feels right. Like, how often have you been in a situation where you're going for a weapon and, either you get 3 rolls in a row of the same 2 perks, or within like 6 rolls, you get like, three rolls of the same 2 perks. Like, before all this, it's like, oh, well, RNG, that's crazy, even though I got, 3 out of 6 for these one roll, but, I can't get one of the good rolls I want out of 50 drops. Like, how does that make sense? RNG. But this would mean it's not RNG. And I feel like this has happened a good amount. I can't imagine anyone who plays Destiny a lot has not run into that sort of situation. And it's infuriating. There is no excuse for this. I don't care if this is not intentional. And again, I don't think it's intentional. There should have been a deeper investigation here, and it should not have taken the community to come up with some sort of crazy sounding conspiracy theory and then, I would say, proving it true with data to get this addressed. We're at the point where, like, if Bungie comes out and says, we investigated this, it's not happening, I'm not going to believe them. I just, at this point, like, the idea is that they've missed this for years. So no, I'm not going to trust their stripped down, team and their lack of QA and like all of this stuff. I'm not going to trust them to accurately report this. And this needs to be a serious, deep investigation. And I don't think they have done that. I think they look to see if perks are weighted. They're not, and they move on. They have not looked into other possible explanations for this happening and have been kind of dismissing the community as like, oh, these guys, they hate RNG, blah, blah, blah. And we could talk about how this relates to crafting. That's probably a whole other video. But what happens from here? Either Bungie's going to come out and say this is not true, in which loads of people are not going to believe them. People weren't even believing them before this. After this information, I would not expect a lot of people to believe them. Or they're going to say, oops, this is happening. We just missed it for 4 years, 5 years. Like, who knows? And then the community would be super pissed about that. And it's hard to explain just how much that would break trust in a time where a lot of people don't have a lot of trust in Bungie in the first place. The example of this happening before was the XP throttling that they had that, they didn't lie about it, but they never really told us about it. And then it was like, not functioning as intended. There's sometimes these combination of like stealth nerfs, but also bugs. This just happened with like, oh yeah, we reduced subsequent ignition damage, which we didn't put in a patch note, but also it's bugged and it's reducing it way more than we thought. And like, this is stupid shit that comes up and like, them dropping the ball in one way or another. But this is the core of the game. The core of the game is farming for weapons, farming for rolls you want, and being able to be rewarded with those rolls. And I how many times have players been like, I've spent all this time trying to get this roll, couldn't get it. Makes no sense why if I farm 200 version of this weapon, I can't even get a roll. I quit. This game is too based on luck. And then when crafting shows up, everyone's like, "Oh my god, crafting! Thank you. This is killing, terrible RNG." And again, I'll do that whole thing later. But this is so damaging for the game, both in terms of like how many players this may have pushed away, the trust in Bungie from here, how much time avid players feel like they've wasted trying to chase a specific role if it's part of this 3 distance system. Like, this is terrible. This is one of the worst things I've ever seen. I don't know how this could like not be true at this point. It does not make sense to me that this data would present itself in this fashion where, you have several dozen drops of the close perks and you have 0 drops in some of these charts of the faraway perks. It should be evenly distributed. That's the whole point of no waiting is, if something is a 1 in 24 chance, sure, sometimes the luck is awful and it's you don't get it after 100 or something, but the data shown on mass accumulation of these different weapons, of not just like the good weapons, of like any weapon, it's one of the stats guys said something about like how they they do this for a living, and if this was an accident, it would be like winning 10 lotteries in a row. Like it does not happen. If you want a better, smarter analysis of this, you can go watch Scaro's video. He's like an actual scientist and is better at analyzing things. There's a lot of interesting threads to read about this, and a lot of props to those guys who've been doing so much work on this. I want to know what Bungie's going to say about this. They can't ignore this. They even addressed it before when it didn't seem like as big of an issue, but this is more important. I don't know. I'm pretty mad about it, honestly. Like, I've devoted so much time to this game, and to know that so many of those hours going for maybe a specific role of something was wasted, and I didn't like have nearly the chance I thought of to get something. Totally inexcusable. Totally infuriating. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, if you believe it or don't believe it. Again, not to say do your own research, but do your own research by looking at all this data that people have made. You can test this. You can test this out. So like if you're like me and you crafted all the Echo's weapons and you just had a bunch of extra engrams lying around, still you can start turning those in. I do like the Season of Dawn weapons, and then I posted a link to a chart like in my article about this, where you can match up your drops. Like, keep a record of your perk drops and match it up on the chart. And it's like, did you get any of the 3 distance ones? Did you get 6 of the 1 distance one and 0 of the other one? Like, and it's always those ones that's the distribution. Like, how did you fall into the chart distribution? And it should show this. So maybe not with every single person, but on the whole, it should show this. So I'd be curious to see people test that out themselves. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll talk more about this later. Take care.